Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. And as you know, I have been preaching for really the last few months on a series called The Plagues of Egypt. And this is a series that God had instructed me to teach on before we had this virus that is sweeping around the world. So God knew that the virus was coming. And now as we deal with the plagues of Egypt, go ahead, AV department, and play the video for this message about the plagues of Egypt.
The Lord said to Moses, "Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and tell him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go, that they may serve me. For this time I will send all my plagues against your heart, against your officials, and against your people, that you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. For now I would have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been cut off from the earth. But indeed, for this cause I have made you stand, to show you my power, and that my name may be declared throughout all the earth, as you still exalt yourself against my people, that you won't let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as has not been in Egypt since the day it was founded, even until now. Now, therefore, command that all of your livestock and that all you have in the field be brought into shelter. Every man and animal that is found in the field and isn't brought home, the hail shall come down on them, and they shall die." Those who feared the Lord's word among the servants of Pharaoh made their servants and their livestock flee into the houses. Whoever didn't respect the Lord's word left his servants and his livestock in the field. The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward the sky, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on man and on animal and on every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt." Moses stretched out his rod toward the heavens, and the Lord sent thunder, hail, and lightning flashed down to the earth. The Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. So there was very severe hail and lightning mixed with the hail, such as had not been in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. The hail struck throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and animal. And the hail struck every herb of the field, and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said to them, "I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Pray to the Lord. There has been enough of mighty thunderings and hail. I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer." Moses said to him, "As soon as I have gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands to the Lord. The thunder shall cease, and there will not be any more hail, that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you don't yet fear the Lord God." The flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the ear and the flax was in bloom. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they had not grown up. Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread abroad his hands to the Lord, and the thunders and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured on the earth. When Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more and hardened his heart, he and his servants. The heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he didn't let the children of Israel go, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses.
Now this is the plague of hail. And I want to talk today from the simple subject, when all hell breaks loose. Here, God said in Exodus 9:14, "For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart." This is the first time God says he's going to send the plagues on Pharaoh's heart. You see, sometimes you have to sends stuff at a different level to where it hits people at a different point in their life. It's like those of you who have kids. Sometimes you can threaten to punish them and it doesn't make any difference because they didn't care about that thing anyway. You have to choose something that is dear to their heart. My father used to always say, the nerve that runs to the pocketbook is very sensitive. Sometimes he couldn't, when he had to discipline somebody, he had to cut their money. And when he cut their money, it went straight to their heart. So here, God says, I'm going to send all of these plagues on your heart. This stuff is going to hit you at a different level. But he also told Pharaoh this. He said, for by now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with a plague that would have wiped them off the earth. God says, I could have killed you. Do you know from so many of the things that all of us have done, God could have killed us? And I mean just some stuff. How many of you all have dozed off at the wheel while driving? I mean, you know how it is when you're not and you wake up and you don't even know how long you've been asleep, but you're still on the road. Do you know how many people are killed every year from dozing off on the road? We could have been dead already. And this was just our fault. We got on the road knowing we were sleepy, or we just ate a huge meal, and we done got on the road knowing that we probably going to get woozy and all of us. And that's just one example. There's so many things in so many ways that we have violated both natural and spiritual laws. And we could have been dead. I've had situations where I could have been dead from speeding, from stuff, and just all the things that could have come upon me that God protected me from. Do you know how much stuff could have come upon you? You've had friends who did less than you did, but they got some terrible consequences that you were spared from. So God here told us, look, he said, I could have wiped you and all your folk off the face of the earth, because it wasn't like he hadn't done that before. He did it with the flood. He wiped everybody off the face of the earth except for 8 people. But he told Pharaoh, these plagues may be rough, but I've had mercy on you because I could have wiped you off of the earth. And he says again in verse 16, but I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power and that my name might be proclaimed in all of the earth. Some of us right now, our testimonies are from our trials. It's from what we've gone through. And we're able to testify to people about God because what he has brought us through from our own stuff. Some of my greatest testimonies, they've not come through victories, they've come through trials that I've overcome through the help of the Lord. So here, God was prefacing Pharaoh, I could have killed you, I could have wiped all your people out, and you're going through this because you're going to have a testimony at the end of this thing. And if there are two kinds of testimonies. There's the kind of testimony you make to other people about what you've been through, and there's a kind of testimony you see other folk in and say, Lord, I don't want to go through that. I've had a situation where God spoke to me. He said, look, in terms of your health, he's given me all of these guidelines. He said, you will not be in the middle. And he said, he actually pointed out Suzanne's father. Suzanne's father is 80-something years old. He's got a wife that's about half his age, and she can't keep up with him sexually. That's just the bottom line. And God says, you're going to be either magnificent or terrible. You'll be terrific or terrible. You won't be in the middle. And he pointed out Suzanne's daddy. He said, that is an example of terrific. And then he pointed out another person, and he said, that's an example of terrible. And I knew I wanted to be like Suzanne's daddy, And I knew I didn't want to be like that other fella. So sometimes testimony operates on both ends. God will show somebody and say, these are people, you don't want to be like them. You want to be like them. You testify with your life and with your results on both of those. So here God told Pharaoh some of the reasons you're going to go through all this. You're going to be a testimony for me, one way or the other. And here in Exodus 19, it says, give an order now to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter, because the hail will fall on every person and animal that has not been brought in and is still out in the field, and they will die. Those officials of Pharaoh who feared the word of the Lord hurried to bring their slaves and their livestock inside. But those who ignored the word of the Lord left their slaves and livestock in the field. Now this is an interesting verse. This is the first time of all of the plagues when God gave the people a choice. He gave them a choice. Now, sometimes I have to, it's some things I just have to wonder, how in the world do folk do that? Let me explain to you this scenario. Now I'm one of the officials of Egypt. I have seen Moses and Aaron come, and I have seen them say, we're going to turn the water into blood. And all of the water, and all of the rivers, and even all of the wells, and even all of the pots turned into blood. Then they come back to Pharaoh and they said, I'm going to bring frogs out of the river. And all of a sudden, land just overrun with frogs. Then they come back and say, I'm going to send flies all over the land. All of a sudden, flies all over the land. Then they come back and say, I'm going to send pestilence and all your livestock going to die. All the livestock die. Then they come back and I'm going to put boils all over and all. So here he comes back on the seventh time. Now you done seen this man come into Pharaoh 6 times. And each time he comes into Pharaoh, he says something that is phenomenal, that's unlikely, that has never really happened in the land before, and it happens. It happens just like he says it's going to happen, when he says it's going to happen. And it only disappears when he commands that it goes. So you have seen this happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. You done seen this happen 6 times. So on the 7th time, y'all say the 7th time. So on this, that's the first time. I could see plenty of questions about the first time. See, I would have my ears perked up on the 2nd time. But this is not the 2nd, this is the 7th time. On the 7th time, Moses comes and says, hail is going to fall from the sky like you have never seen before. And it's going to kill everything out in the open. So bring all of your livestock and all of your slaves in shelter, because if they're out in the open, all of them going to be killed. Do you know? Y'all said, do you know? Some of them folk, after seeing this thing happen 6 times in a row, still didn't listen. And this is the part that gets me. I can understand not listening on the first time, absolutely. Maybe even on the 2nd time, but it's this time number 7. You done seen 7 things this man has said come to pass, and all you got to do is bring your folk inside. Bring your animals inside, and see, slaves in that day were kind of equivalent to employees. That's why it's important who boss you serving under. Your boss makes a world of difference. Because if you got one of them bosses that say, I ain't listening to that man. Yeah, I know you when he said 6 times. Y'all stay out there. And see, you would have had to do what the boss told you to do, because you were a slave. You didn't have an option. So you lived or died based on who your boss was. And if your boss told you, look, don't worry about what Moses and his brother, them crazy folks said. Yeah, I know about it. No, don't worry about that. Y'all stay out there in the, yeah, I know it's a little cloud in the sky. Don't worry about that. Y'all stay out there in the field. Y'all keep picking that cotton. Y'all keep keep harvesting the wheat. You keep harvesting the corn. You all stay out there in the field. You see about the sheep. You see, no, don't break. No. I know about all that. Yeah, I see it starting to wind blowing up. Don't worry about that. You all stay out there. They died because their boss did not have sense enough to heed the signs. And it's hard for me to understand how anybody could see 6 times what this man said come to pass, and on the 7th time not bring his folk and his livestock inside. And you say to yourself, how can somebody keep doing the same thing over and over, and they've seen the same results, and you know if they do it the 7th time, the same thing gonna happen? It happens, people. Sometimes it'll be the word of God who will, and I've just seen that. See, first of all, folk have a tendency to do what they want to do. That's been God's whole problem from the very beginning. Even when the word of God comes to folk, they say this, yeah, I hear, but that ain't what I want to do. And they will do what they want to do. See, them bosses, them managers, those officials of Egypt, they didn't want to bring their folk inside. They figured they could make a little bit more money if they kept them out in the field, which they probably could have. But what they didn't realize, it was going to cost them a whole lot more than it was going to save them. It cost them all of their employees, all of their slaves, and it cost them all of their livestock. Now see, this is another point that I brought out in the last sermon dealing with the death of intimacy about the boils. God said that for them to bring in their livestock, but the pestilence in the 5th plague had killed all of the livestock. So when I read that, when I was dealing with the boils, I said, wait a minute. He put boils on the livestock, on the animals, but the animals were dead from the last plague. And then he told them to bring in the livestock in the 7th plague, but all the livestock were killed in the 5th plague. I said, how did they even have any livestock for the 6th and the 7th plague if all of the livestock were killed in the 5th plague? See, my mind just works like that. Most people may not have thought about that, but I got this scientific mind that when stuff doesn't, the dots don't connect. I said, why is that the case? God never gave a time frame on how long it was between the plagues. See, we just assumed this stuff all happened like a week. No. There's no time frame on how long these plagues lasted. See, usually a plague is not quick. Just like the plague we're dealing with right now. We don't know how long this thing gonna last. Not only do we not know how long it's gonna last, we don't know if it's ever going away. At least in terms of the changes that it makes in behavior and in society, we don't know if this society will ever stop wearing masks. Because when we travel over to the Asian countries and you go there, had folk that got on masks every day. And they've been had them on for years. We don't know if this will ever change, if it will ever go away, and a new plague, see, a new virus comes up every 2 or 3 years anyhow. So we assumed, and for the longest, I assumed that the plagues of Egypt, I just assumed Moses was coming back every morning with a new plague. But the Bible never said that. I just thought it was every day he would come back with a new plague. No. That thing could have been years between each plague because they had some new livestock. God said he killed all of the livestock of the Egyptians. They had some new animals by the time the boils came, and they had some more animals by the time the hail came. Sometimes, and that's sometimes our issue with spiritual things. We don't know how long this stuff gonna last. God has promised me some stuff. Am I the only one? And God has spoken some stuff, and you ask God, what's some two words in that question? How long? How long? And see, when all hell breaks loose, sometimes that storm is not over because first of all, it wasn't just hail. it was thunder, it was hail, and some versions say it was fire on the ground. That's why in the video you saw when the hail hit, it was turning into fire. Now some versions say fire on the ground, some versions say lightning. I don't know exactly which one it was, but whichever one, it was probably lightning coming down, making stuff burn on the ground. Because and lightning, technically from a scientific point, doesn't come down. It goes from the earth to the sky. It goes up. But when it does strike, it often sets stuff on fire. So that wasn't just hail. There was thunder. And some folks just be scared to death just of the thunder. The thunder scare you to death. But there was hail and lightning. Usually, when you're going through major storms, it ain't just one thing. It's a multitude of things that's happening in your life. When one area is impacted, that same area it spreads out to other areas. So when you have a romantic problem, you don't generally just have a romantic problem. That stuff affect your money. Then when your romance messed up, your money messed up, your health, then you can't sleep good. And when you can't sleep good, your health starts, all of that, and then your spirit goes next. Because now you're depressed about all your stuff. My money gone, my relationship gone, and I ain't feeling well. So now all this stuff cascades, and you're in what's called a perfect storm. And here, when all this stuff is raining down, all hell has broken loose. But I wondered, how did some of the people not listen to the word of God and it's if they'd have just come in from the rain, if they'd have just come inside like God told them to do, they wouldn't have had any problem. If folk just would listen to what God says to do, it would eliminate you'd be so sheltered. But sometimes we're out in the world instead of in the house. Sometimes and this building itself, it is emblematic of shelter because it's built literally like a fort. The walls are so thick, they're made out of this old stone. When we have to drill in the wall, the contractor has to go by a special bit, and they say, Pastor, it take me hours to drill through this wall with a high-powered drill. The wall is so thick. So if there's ever a storm coming, this is the place to be. It literally is the place to be. A tornado would not knock this building down. It's just that strong. So it's symbolic that you need to be in the house when the storm comes. You need to be where God has told you to be. But so many people, they just won't listen, and they won't follow. And then they wonder, why did all my stuff get killed? There was once an owner of a picture gallery, where artists would come and hang up their pictures. And one day the owner called one of his artists. He said, look, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. And the artist said, well, what's the good news? He said, well, a man came in yesterday and he asked to see your paintings. And then he asked me the question. He said, does an artist's paintings increase in value when they die? And I told him, yeah, in 99% of the cases, once the artist dies, the paintings shoot way up in value. He said, the man brought every painting you had in the gallery. And the artist said, that is fantastic. That is great. He said, what's the bad news? The bad news is the man was your doctor. You see, sometimes we get these warnings. And God knows way more than the doctor. He knows what's coming in your world. But we won't heed the warning. And here was the first time of the plague. God gave the people a clear choice. Bring in all your people and bring in all your animals and put them inside. And if they're inside, they will be shielded and protected from the storm that's coming. Bring them inside. There's somebody who's watching me right now, and you're outside in the cold, and you just need to come inside. I mean, you literally need to first come inside. So I'm talking to you right now, and you need to come inside this building. I know streaming, I I tell my kids, I say, look, y'all got to go to church one day a week. Once a week, you got to go to church. And they actually asked me this morning, well, can we just stream it? I said, no. You can't just stream it. You all young, you all healthy, and you're going everywhere else you want to go. So if you're going everywhere else you want to go, now I can understand if you had some underlying issue and you were scared to come to the house of God, you were scared to go out there, but you are going everywhere else you want to go. So if you're going everywhere else you want to go, you can come into the house. There's somebody out there right now, and you're going through a storm. You need to literally get up and you need to come into the house. You need to be here on next Sunday. Simple as that. We've gone over, we got the best medical stuff. We check your temperature. You have masks. You have social separation. You are safer here than you are in the grocery store, and you're safer here than anywhere else you're going. And you just need to come into the house. There's a power and there is a protection of just physically coming into the house of God. God told the people, come inside and you will not be destroyed. And yet there were still people, after seeing all of those signs, after seeing all of that stuff, still would not listen. And sometimes there are reasons why we don't listen. Sometimes we don't listen just because we just don't feel like doing what God has told us to do. Because anytime God has told us to do something, the vast majority of the time is something we don't want to do on our own because we're already doing what we want to do. See, we're already doing what we want to do. When God has to tell you something, usually that's a path that you really don't. I'm on a fast right now. I don't want to be on a fast. And I was at home yesterday, and my wife was cooking. The food was just smelling I was so hungry. And I wasn't even hungry. It was just the food was, I wasn't even hungry. But I wanted to eat so bad because I just wanted to. Wasn't even hungry. I just wanted to because it smelled so good with all of the food wafting through the house. But God had told me, you need to fast once a month. And you do this, and it'll help cleanse and keep your body in good shape. I didn't want to do it, but I've seen what terrible looks like. And I've seen what terrific looks like. Now, Suzanne's daddy probably doesn't fast. He probably don't fast at all. Ain't got nothing to do with me. God has given me specific directions of how to keep my body in terrific shape. But a lot of that stuff I just don't want to do. I just don't want to do it. But I got a choice. I can be either inside God's word and inside his covenant and be protected and shielded, or I can be out there in the storm. I don't want any part of that storm. So the reason I'm on this fast now is not because pastors just love to do what God says. I don't want the storm. I don't want to be out in the cold when all hell breaks loose. I want to be protected and sheltered under. We've had a financial hailstorm that we're still going through now. And we're just as protected. My company, that James and I, we're just as protected as we can be. This church is just as protected as we can be. Didn't have to go through the storm. But we had to be inside. We had to be in his word. See, in order for God to protect my money, I had to be in covenant with my money. I had to be inside. So, to that person or persons, and you're watching me digitally right now. It's great to watch me digitally. If you're scared to go out, don't come out. If you're not going anywhere else, don't go anywhere else. But there's somebody I'm speaking to right now, and you need to be inside. You need to be inside this building. You need to get up and drive and come here. Don't come with a temperature. Don't come if you're sick, because you won't get in the building if you got a temperature. But you need to come. You really do. There is a power of being inside. And you've been out in the storm long enough, and you have been where all hell has broken loose long enough. And sometimes we have to recognize when it is time for us to simply come inside. The plagues of Egypt. Yet there were some who were even Egyptians. At a point, God separated and says, if you obey, even though you are Egyptians, if you obey, I will shield you and I will protect you. Thus saith the Lord. You can watch this sermon all over again or send it to a friend. Simply go to brothersoftheword.com and you'll be able to watch thousands of sermons absolutely free and share them with friends. We thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. This is Pastor Nathaniel, and I hope that you truly enjoyed this message and that it blesses your life. If you would like to help support this ministry, we ask that you do two things. First, bow your heads for 10 seconds and ask God, Lord, what shall I give? When He answers you, go to iwanttogive.com and support this ministry. Let's bow our heads for just 10 seconds. Amen. If you heard the Lord's voice, go to iwanttogive.com. This is Pastor Nathaniel. Be blessed.